back to 10 more little known facts about serial killers. So, start off this week's with Jeffrey Dahmer again. Jeffrey Dahmer was once voted class clown. Matter of fact, in high school, he was known as a little bit of a prankster and loved to pull gags and jokes on fellow students, and was loved and admired by a lot of fellow students. And the real deviant side of Jeffrey Dahmer didn't come out until much later after high school itself, even though when he was younger he still was torturing animals and hanging their heads on sticks at his home. But nobody knew about that until later on. He kept that part of him secret. Next, Richard Chase. Richard Chase was a kind of a sick and twisted individual. Obviously, he's a serial killer. But Richard Chase would only break into homes if he found the home unlocked. If he went to the home and the doors were all locked and the windows were all locked, he felt like he wasn't invited in. And he wouldn't break in and he wouldn't rape and kill the occupants of the home. But if he got there and he found your back door unlocked, he actually took it as an invite to come in, and his words, come in and play and have fun. Ted Bundy is the next one. Ted Bundy was a unique individual. Ted, as we all know, worked once for a suicide hotline, was actually honored for working with the suicide hotline, and had saved more than a couple of people's lives by talking them out of actually committing suicide. But something from his younger youth that's a little known fact about Ted Bundy is that he actually helped save a little boy from drowning. Ted Bundy. Next up on the list, Arthur Sargeras, known as the Genesee River Killer. During a prison raid and riot there where he was being housed, he actually saved the life of a guard by getting him out of the area where he was at to safety and making sure that nobody hurt him. And why did he do it when so many other guards were beaten and a couple of them died in that? Because he liked him. He found him to be an honorable man, and he found him to have compassion for even those who were there for some of the most horrific crimes. He saved a prison guard's life. Next up on the list, BTK Killer. Little known fact about the BTK Killer, and is covered in the book some, is that he used to break into the homes of victims, soon to be victims, I should say, and he would take a nap on their bed, in their bedrooms. And then he would wake up after setting an alarm, and then he would come back and kill them later. But he liked to come in and sleep and take a nap in their beds before he killed them. Next up, Richard Ramirez. Little known fact about Richard Ramirez. Besides, he used to most of the time he crawled in through windows, to get a hold of his victims. A couple of times he was able to jimmy open a door and get in through that way. But Richard Ramirez, like a lot of serial killers, loved to collect items from his victims, little mementos to keep as a memory of his victims, a trophy, if you will. But Richard Ramirez was a little bit different. He always kept a memento of the victims that had absolutely no resale value, and he would take things that were completely made no real sense. One victim, he stole the tissues out of a trash can. Another one, he stole a lock of her hair. These were the things that Richard Ramirez liked to do, and he was different in that way. Where a lot of serial killers will keep like a driver's license, maybe a pair of earrings or a bracelet. It has some sentimental value, but it's more. It has it's a trophy within itself. Next up is Joey Metheny. Joey Metheny was a cannibalistic serial killer and killed at least, from what the FBI has been able to determine, he killed at least 10, but he may have killed as many as 15. But before he died, he admitted in an interview that he used to take the skin off of his victims and take a chunk of flesh, mainly from the back of the leg of these women, and he would then grind it up and add it to beef and then serve it to the general public. He owned a food cart, a food truck, if you will. It pulled behind a pickup truck and had the food wagon behind it. But he actually served victims to the general public. Joey Metheny. Next up, Ed Kemper. Ed Kemper, while awaiting execution, narrated up to 7 complete books for the blind. Not just the blind within the penitentiary. All 7 of the complete books that he narrated were released out here in the general public, and a lot of the morbid websites out there that collect items from serial killers and trade in this type of memorabilia, the same type of people who went to the Watts home and pulled out all the flowers from the front yard and pressed them to dry and sell them, are the same people who collect the audiobooks by Ed Kemper. He did 7 complete audiobooks and was working on number 8 just before his execution. But during his time doing these audiobooks for the blind, he actually received 2 awards from outside journalistic agencies, societies, for doing these audiobooks for the blind. Next up, Kenneth Bonacci. Bonacci? How you pronounce it? The Hillside Strangler. Killed 10 women during his crimes, his spree as being a serial killer. But what makes his case interesting was he was actually what they called a cadet in advance, or an advanced cadet, which basically means that he went on ride-alongs with the LAPD to learn what the job actually entailed. So it was kind of like their version of take a ride along with the cop to see if you really want to be a cop. This is what their day-to-day life and what they go through. And he took up to 7 complete rides with LAPD. But instead of asking questions about the Hillside Strangler, about being a law enforcement officer, he asked questions solely about the Hillside Strangler case, and to find out where the police were in the investigation of catching up to him. He killed these women, and then went on ride-alongs with the LAPD, who had no idea, absolutely no idea. And they said, "Oh my God, this guy has been with us, and he's been following us, and he's been, digging into us for information this entire time." But he killed 10 women. Next, Richard Case again. Richard Case is the last one for the day. Richard Case, on his forearm muscle, had the initials RKR. And during his lifetime, during his time he was in prison and being interviewed and The FBI had come and talked to him several times, and so did state and local law enforcement agencies, trying to find out just how many victims he really had, and to get him to confess to his litany of crimes. He never answered to them truthfully what RKR meant. Well, it turns out just before his death, he finally admitted what RKR stood for. It stood for Robert K. Kressler. Who is Robert K. Kressler? Well, Robert K. Wrestler, sorry, not Kressler, Wrestler, was the FBI agent who actually termed the term serial killer. He had put the FBI agent's initials on his arm. RKR. Because he finally had a name for who he was and what he did.